And the WOW demo, this is Ron Fieldhouse. So Ron, as you know, was our chemistry guy for Essential Chemistry, and our Education Solutions team. He's moved over to sales, taking on that challenge. And so I've asked him to do a demo. It's a demo that I've seen in the past, done at the American Chemical Society meeting. And with the onset of the wireless sensors, it really changes the approach of what you can do with this particular demonstration. One of the things that when you go out and you sell the product, and you'll hear from John and I in a few moments afterwards, is about selling the product around standards that we do domestically. Now, there's different standards that you could talk about with the approach here, but with our sensors, it's about making that invisible visible and having people realize the need for the products we have. And if you've been in a sales situation and you've been asked to go in and say, hey, I want you to come in, show us Pasco products, and show us why you would use Pasco. Why would I use sensors? Okay, this is a great demonstration to show them the need for sensors, the need for measurement, so you can show things that you've never seen before. We're going to use a CO2 sensor. And with the CO2 sensor, we know that we can talk about photosynthesis, and we bring it in plants. My folks all the time, they're traveling like you. I need something that's quick and easy that I can get in front of a customer, if it's one-on-one or in a small group. What can I show them as a powerful demonstration? Okay, so that's what Ron's going to do here. I'm going to have him walk you through that of how you would use the CO2 sensor in a very simple experiment. So Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you there.
Okay. So to make it a good demo, it has to be portable, so you can take it with you. So I'm going to start out with a 1 liter flask. It doesn't have to be this Nalgene bottle. It can be a water bottle. It can be any kind of a 1 liter flask. And do I have my? I don't know why I'm not seeing something here. Let me just fix this real quick.
Now we can have this file, but one thing I talked to Ron about, I like when I show SparkView, I like to make sure I'm showing multiple displays. So in this case, he's got a graph, he's got a digits display, and we put a little question there, an assessment. Why do I do that? What's that? See if you listened. On the sales side, why would I want to show 3 different types of displays in my software, Pasco software? Because someone else can't, right? So we want to show things the competitor cannot do. Okay? Teachers love assessment. It's a driving question that we have there. And in this case, we ask the question, what has the greatest density? Air or carbon dioxide? Okay. So Ron ran this morning. He's going to
just restart it. I think I started it too early. Let me just restart it here.
He was over planning.
These
are things as they walk in the presentations. It's important to, before you go and get everything set, and having a config file does help that, and carrying that config file in. All right. So we're going to go in and connect the CO2 sensor. The CO2 sensors we know will shut off after non-use after how many minutes?
5.
5 minutes. So we'll pop that in. Does anybody know the maximum value of the CO2 sensors in ppms? 100,000. Okay. So you got to think of those things when you run your experiment of, will it read what I'm trying to do?
All right, let's try this again.
All right, there you go. The CO2 sensor also know that it takes 5 minutes for it to warm up. So before you go into a meeting, you want to get it turned on. It's reading. It's on there. And then you got the other one right there. We probably overcomplicated it.
There we go.
We'll tell you why, because we're going to run a second experiment with this. So we've got 2 CO2 sensors because we're trying to jump from one to the next. And in this case here, Ron's just measuring the CO2 within the beaker. And what he's going to have in his hand is some baking soda and some vinegar. Just
Okay.
takes a very little amount.
So baking soda you can get just about anywhere. And I'm going to use a little bit of vinegar. Another way to do this is you could also generate CO2 gas with like Alka-Seltzer tablets. A couple of these in here with a very little amount of water, that should work just fine. One of the tricks, if you're going to do this demo, do not put in too much vinegar. All right, so let me put a little bit of baking soda in there. Doesn't take much. I'm just going to put a little bit of vinegar in there.
So while he's pouring that, how many believe the normal air around us? What do you think happens when CO2 is produced? Does it float up or does it drop down? How many say it goes up? Smart group, right? One. Others say it's more dense, it goes down. Well, let's check our answer. And CO2 is correct.
Okay.
So that's a formative assessment, is what they would call that here. And it's just a check of the knowledge within the group. And showing things like that to a teacher in a group starts taking our software away from Vernier and showing that we're doing things that apply to the classroom and how the teachers would do a demo to the class.
Okay. So if the theory is correct, my CO2 is still sitting in this bottle. It hasn't floated up and gone away. And it is more dense than air. So I should be able to pour this invisible gas into my beaker, and we should be able to see it up on the screen. So it's going to look rather silly when you watch me, because I'm going to pick it up, and it looks like I'm pouring absolutely nothing. Hopefully the numbers behind me are changing.
Yeah.
And it looks completely silly. Because if those numbers weren't changing, you'd think I was crazy. If I accidentally put too much vinegar in here, it would start pouring out and liquid would go, and it kind of ruins the demo. So how do we do? Oh, wow. Wow. Did you like that demo?
So all that takes is a CO2 sensor, a little bit of baking soda vinegar, or just an Alka-Seltzer tablet with some water in a container, and just to pour it. And it makes that what we call that invisible visible. We had that tagline a few years back, but I think it's in this case we're not talking about a particular standard at this point. But if you wanted to tie it to a standard, you could talk about chemistry, you could tie it into biology, various things that you would do. The one experiment that I've seen this done at the ACS meeting was at a much bigger scale. And I thought this was kind of a wow. And when you go into sales, sometimes you just got to get the wow in front of the customer to make them remember you and go, I want to go with them, right? And if you get too technical, you kind of lose them. So we're going to go with the wow.
So we want to kick it up a notch.
Yep.
Just a little bit. And baking soda. Sodium bicarbonate. Yep.
So let's
No water.
move off to the side here so they can see it better. So we're in front of it. And you can move your camera and show that. So give us a few seconds. This is one that I would do in front of a science department chair or a larger group. Right? It involves fire. Who likes fire? Explosions. We're not allowed to do explosions. But so Ron's going to get the camera set up.
Actually, we're gonna do the camera second.
Okay. So in this case here, I'm going to take a whole box of baking soda. Put it at the bottom. We put the beaker in there to keep the CO2 sensor from the vinegar. And we also take a temp sensor. All right? And we're going to pose, and why do we want to put the temp sensor in there at the bottom and pour vinegar over it? Shows endothermic, exothermic. And then for a salesperson selling Pasco, why do I want to show my temp sensor in a liquid? Verniers can't do that. Put it at the bottom, right? say, try this with anybody else's, and you'll see. All right? So what we're running there now is the CO2 sensor in the little beaker.
Here, let's use this one.
The temp sensor is just sitting on the bottom.
We've got data. All right. We're good to go.
And if you want to get technical, you can put the camera on it, and you can see it fizz and fuzz. And
I'm going to get the camera out in a second.
And this is where you pose the same questions. What kind of gas is produced when you have baking soda and vinegar? CO2. How do we know it's not carbon monoxide? How do we know it's carbon dioxide? Well, let's get out our carbon dioxide sensor. And let's measure what happens to the carbon dioxide levels.
Is that water? Earth?
This is vinegar.
Vinegar again.
Vinegar.
And notice the temperature is going down instead of up. So as gas leaves the system, it takes the energy with it. There's our CO2. But that's not the end of this demo. That's not the end. You're wondering why we got a camera here. So I'm going to close this out real quick now that you've seen it.
So another question is CO2 gas flammable? Should we risk it?
Please.
So what do you think is going to happen when I light the match and I insert it into the aquarium? Can you back up a little bit for me? So what do you think happens here? It goes out. Why does it go out? It's CO2. CO2 is not flammable. The air pushed out, so the match cannot stay lit because there's CO2 gas in there. We can't see it, but we can measure it. The other thing is,
Now, if it is more dense than air, so that means if we had a little object that was filled with air, it should be able to float on top of that gas.
so our sensors are our eyeballs, but if we could look at things, we could do a little different.
We've discovered, as we were practicing this, that I cannot blow bubbles, and Rich is the bubble blower.
Nope. I need more.
There you go.
So
So that bubble is floating on top of the CO2, the more dense CO2.
All right, so in this case here for a sales demo, this is a wow demo to get the group started. This is a wow demo to show our stuff works. And we showed things within the software. This is in SparkView video, right? We're in SparkView still. We're not in some other app. We're in SparkView. We have the temp sensor drowning in a liquid, vinegar, the CO2 sensor setting aside. We now have a sleeve for the CO2 sensor, so technically we could put the sleeve on and have it there also. But it does work more effectively this way.
There's
And-
nothing special about this webcam. I went out the other night and just went to Best Buy and got one of the cheap ones off the rack, and it plugs right in.
Yeah. So the key is do a wow, get them to buy into the using sensors is bringing that invisibleness of the things that you want to measure around you visible. And I always saw this demo with the bubble and said, I got to make it with sensors. I've seen it done with an O2 and a CO2 sensor inside. So you'll see the oxygen go down and the CO2 go up. So you can take it to any level. We think simple is better. 1 to 2 sensors. Don't make it any more complicated. Put things in that could change, all right? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.